Greetings from the Philippines again. It looks like it's going to be another beautiful day up here on the hill. In this video, we will download and install the Proxmox Virtual Environment, or PVE. I think the version right now is 8.1. As of this recording, we'll double check that. Making sure I mention it in case there is questions about Proxmox provided GUI interface tools for handling virtual machines and containers. I do need to get this video finished up as we will be heading down the hill shortly. Something about being on a TV game show, not clear on the details yet. Well, I guess I'll be informed when we get there. Just know it's going to be hotter down the hill than it is up here. Napakainit, as the locals would say. So, to misquote the bard, just another crazy day in paradise. Alright, getting into it. There are basically two ways to install Proxmox. I'm sure there's more than that. There's basically two ways that are normally used. The first one is to download the Proxmox ISO, burn it to a installation media, USB drive or something, and then install it. Slightly more complex way of installing Proxmox is to load up Debian first and then install it on top of Debian. That can be a little more complicated, a few more things to do. In this series, we're focusing on the first option because it's the simple option. So basically, when installing Proxmox, one is also installing Debian as it's part of the Proxmox ISO, and Proxmox rides on top of it. So installing Proxmox on top of an existing Debian system provides some interesting configuration options, but it's not as easy to do as the base install. Like I say, it adds some complexity to the installation process, and we are trying to stay away from that. We're trying to keep it simple here. I mean, there are some valid reasons for taking this route, but again, we're staying simple here, so we're going to focus on the first option of installing the Proxmox ISO directly. So what we're going to walk through in this video is, first off, getting the Proxmox ISO, downloading it, copying it over to a USB drive, flashing it, I guess is a better word. We don't actually copy it. There's some interesting connotations with that. Then we're going to go ahead and install it on a computer. So let's get to the whole process and see how it all works out, okay? I did ask myself what I wanted to install this on. My original thought was Raspberry Pi. But you know what? I mean, it would install and run because it doesn't take a lot of resources to actually run Proxmox. But you wouldn't be able to do anything after you install it because of limited memory, limited CPU cores. But it would run. I have opted now for where's the front there? Nook computer. More cores, more memory, more powerful. So we'll be installing this on a Nook. Okay. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is go to the Proxmox website, which is at proxmox.com. And we're going to want to select the Proxmox Virtual Environment. You could go straight to the download page, I guess, if you wanted. Then we're going to click on the Virtual Environment download. These are the available downloads. We're going to grab the Proxmox VE 8.1 ISO installer. I want to note this checksum down here. This is for that particular file. Several other downloads here. Most of these come with paid service, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. We can take a quick look at the data sheet though. Let's go ahead and open this up. This is basically what you need to know about Proxmox. like 6 or 7 pages long. Anyway, let's go ahead and grab the ISO. It'll take a few minutes to download. It's about 1.2 gigabytes, 1.29 gigabytes, the actual file size. Once it's downloaded, we're going to go ahead and run through an SHA256 sum check to verify the file. So we're going to copy this number here, this hash. It's not really a number, it's got letters in it. So we're going to copy this hash over to a text editor. Once the file's downloaded, we're going to open a command line. We're in our downloads directory. So this is using Windows here. There's similar ways to do it in Linux. We want to run the cert utility. That's with a capital C and a capital U. We want to select the hash file option, which means we're going to generate the hash file from the download. And then this is our downloaded 8.8-1 hash, our ISO file for Proxmox, and we're doing it at SHA256 hash on it. It'll think about it for a minute or two, then it'll give you a hash value. We're going to copy this hash value here, and just to make it easy, I'm going to paste it in under the one we got from their web page. And we can see pretty clearly that they do match. So that validates our download. So now that we download the file, we're going to use a program like either Baleen Etcher or Rufus or even DD. We're going to select the ISO we downloaded. Then we're going to select a flash drive that we've got plugged into our machine. Proxmox will probably fit on a 2 gig. I recommend at least 4 gigs or bigger. And it's going to take a few minutes for this to flash. So once it's finished flashing, it'll validate the flash, and then we'll be ready to move on to our computer and actually do the install. So once we transfer this USB over to our computer and we boot into it, we're going to get to this screen. And we're going to basically pick the Install Proxmox VE graphical. Again, keeping it simple. Going to load up some code here. Normal sort of startups kind of thing for this program. And eventually we're going to end up in a GUI. And the first part of the install is you should read and accept the EULA, the End User License Agreement. Then here you have the option, you get some information about Proxmox. We have the option to choose your hard drive you're going to install it on, and if you click the options key, you can do some variations. We're just going to go with the default install to keep it simple here. But you can see you can adjust stuff like swap size, max root, min free. Like I say, we're going to keep it simple. Here we can put in our country. I'm currently in the Philippines. Asia, Manila is the time zone, and US English is the keyboard. Now we need to add a password. This is going to be the root password of the Debian system you're adding here. Proxmox does what some might consider a security violation by allowing you to log in as root. You also need to put in an email account here. I've never actually gotten an email from Proxmox, but it'll complain if you don't put an email account in. So as I was saying earlier, generally on Debian we don't expose the root password. Okay, here we're going to set up our network. You pick your network adapter, your host name, IP address, gateway, DNS server. You can check the little box on top that gives a description about the various things you're filling out here. Next up, you'll get a summary of all the decisions you've made to date. And yes, we want to automatically reboot after install. And that's it. You hit install and the installer runs. Now we just wait for it to finish up. So you get some instructions here on your reboot to point your web browser and your port number. And that's how we're going to be accessing the machine once we reboot. We do have SSH set up as default. And like I say, they violate security by letting you log in as root there. That's discussion for another time. So we're going to log in here with our root as the user and the root password. And we want the realm to be Linux PAM. We'll talk about that more in a later video. Okay, now it's going to give us a warning about not having a subscription, which we don't have. Well, you might, I don't. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go to our virtual machine, and we're going to talk about this interface in a later video also. But just follow along here. We're going to go to the or node, and we're going to go to updates. And here you're going to have to fix your updates. You've got a reload and add button and enable button up at the top. On a default install, you've got 2 repositories enabled that are enterprise. There is a non-enterprise repository that we're going to enable and then disable those other 2 repositories. We could do this with the command line, but it's just as easy to do it here through the interface. This is standard APT we're setting up, or APT repository lists. The actual file is stored in etc/apt/sources.list. So once we've got this set up, and we don't have any of the subscription repositories in our list, we can go ahead and refresh our list now that we've changed our repositories. You get the output of the command here, and then you can go ahead and hit the upgrade. And yes, we want to upgrade. And once this upgrade is done, we're basically at the end of this video because we were just going through the install, and I consider the upgrade part of the install. Okay, that was it for getting Proxmox installed and updated and ready for use. We are not going to jump into doing a virtual machine right away. In the next video, we're going to talk about the actual interface and how to navigate, and then we're going to talk about creating users, because again, we've got the root user hanging out there by himself. That's probably not what we want. And after that, we'll talk about storage, and I think then we'll be at a point we can actually create a VM. Remember, the point here is to understand the interface so that when you watch these other tutorials, you have a pretty good idea what they're doing and why they're doing it, not just following the steps. Makes it easier in some ways, also makes it much simpler to troubleshoot. So next video should be up hopefully within the week, and we will look at the interface in Proxmox. See you then.